Hello and welcome to episode 2 of my Cowboys video blog. It's January 9th, 2014. I can understand mistrusting Jerry Jones' talent evaluation, but this team needs talented young players. I'd like to trade down to get an extra third-round pick, but not a severe trade down. I think last year's prices were uniquely high and I wouldn't repeat them. I don't really get much out of evaluating talent for the draft until the combine. I like to compare players to famous established templates and ratios that predict success. It's pretty useless without numbers. I'm not a scout. That's all I really go off. I like to look at YouTube videos, but I film parlayed via flash might be accelerated or slowed down. People could be like making the players appear faster. So obviously, I'm not a scout. So Dallas needs, I think, more than one top end. One more top end wide receiver. I think it's worth another third round pick. Although I don't think a third round pick as good as Terrence Williams is actually going to be there this year. So I don't think this will happen. I believe Dwayne Harris is a good player and he will be a great third wide receiver. The problem is that we need to replace Dwayne Harris as the fourth wide receiver, and we also need to replace him on special teams coverage. All that stuff he does really good. We need to replace if he gets promoted up. I also would miss the special teams coach, Rich Bisaccia. He's been great. I hope he returns. Hopefully I don't want to wish him bad. He was so good for us. I just want him to come back. Special teams was a real asset for Dallas. They hadn't been an asset in a while. Even more valuable, though, I think to this team would be a third running back to challenge and push Murray and Dunbar. The Dallas stable of running backs is not complete. I'd spend a first-round pick on a player as good as Eddie Lacy. What dynamic running back couldn't help this team? I mean, someone who's really fast, someone who's really strong. This offensive line is great zone blocking team, so any running back that could thrive in a zone scheme could really explode inside Dallas's offense. The drift of fate is that you never know who will get injured. If DeMarco Murray went down, we could kiss 2014 goodbye as well. It's too expensive to have many awesome quarterbacks, but running backs are suddenly cheap in the 2010s. Bill Callahan usually has a left hand and a right hand punch and more punch combos at the running back. He's not developing third guys. The third guy has a full-time role. So with the Cowboys having these two really just can they really even contribute to an NFL team running backs at the bottom of the roster? I think they're just wasting space. They need more dynamic players there. Get some better athletes at the bottom of the running back rotation, and then suddenly you'll have like 3 running backs each with 700 yards. Or one running back with 1,200 yards, and then 2 other backs with 400, 500 yards. I think that's what Bill Callahan aspires for. 3 running backs that offer dynamic challenges to defenses, whether it's speed or power. So back now to the defense. Now moving on to the defense, really considering how terrible they were, and it really cost the Cowboys because they had great special teams, they had great offense. They were number 4 in scoring, I think, or Tony Romo was number 4 in throwing touchdowns. I don't know if they were number 4 in offense overall, but overall it was the defense that really let us down. Okay, so addressing the number 1 player, DeMarcus Ware. I don't think he's likely to take a pay cut. He has too many backloaded contracts. This team is going to need elite players to win the Super Bowl. We need a healthy Ware more than we need a bunch of mid-salary scrubs to replace him. This team has a gargantuan number of players under contract due to IR and such. How many defensive ends will Dallas carry next year? George Selvey and Everett Brown are low budget and somewhat expected back. DeMarcus Ware is under contract with no announcement of likely changes ahead, so that's 3. I doubt Spencer comes back because I feel Dallas really wants to get younger. I think Spencer's a good player, but we're so injured, and he's not even under contract. But if he did, that's 4 defensive ends that we actually supposedly like. Will we really bring in 4 defensive ends? And then we could certainly afford a draft pick there. But let's keep in mind, DeMarcus Ware is the only player under contract who's ever had a double-digit sack season, and he's the only player on the roster likely to ever do so. Dallas's worst defensive performances came with the linebackers having to change out rapidly, in my opinion. They were responsible for many 8-play, 80-yard touchdown drives that Dallas suffered. Detroit and Green Bay, they all featured middle linebackers who hadn't practiced all week having to come into the game. Overall, the defense will get better being in the second year. Bruce Carter didn't thrive in the 3-4 until his second year, and I hope the same for him in his second year in the 4-3. Kyle Weber is a guy we can use going forward. He really emerged as the season went on. Sean Lee needs to stay healthy. Stephen Holloman showed he's a good player, but we need a really good player to play backup to middle linebacker. When we lost quality play at middle linebacker, the defense nearly set a record for bad. For that reason, I think Holloman may stay at middle linebacker and honestly compete with Sean Lee, but ultimately we just need two really strong players at that position. The most anonymous player on defense were the safeties. It's not clear how the team sees Wilcox versus Heath. A very good coverage safety who's tall enough to body check Calvin Johnson would really help. Sensabaugh was never a star safety, but he actually was pretty good matched up against tall wide receivers, and I missed him for that. Turnovers declined as the season went on. That was a real drag. Dallas has basically only Nick Hayden under contract at defensive tackle. Nick Hayden should be a two-down player. Jason Hatcher is probably cheaper than expected, and I think he may come back. Other than that, who is going to play defensive tackle? It seems to me that if there's a true position of need, it's right up the middle. This team has a lot of moving parts, and as a virtue, it has already tore through the ranks of players they scouted for 2013. Dallas is already very familiar with every player on the couch that exists that could possibly play their system. So now it seems the best way that they're going to improve is maybe even through mild trades. I don't know what the future holds immediately, but I do hope it includes DeMarcus Ware. I hope he can return to health or even 90% of his greatness. And I think Bruce Carter will return. It's funny to say that it's like Bruce Carter, Kyle Wilber, Sean Lee, and Stephen Holloman are all playing linebacker, and it seems like there's a lot of good players at one position. But how can we have such a bad defense? And it's easy to say, like, Mo Claiborne had a bad season, and Brandon Carr wasn't himself, and well, the other cornerbacks, I guess, except for Webb, did play better. Scandrick was a better player than he normally was. So many players and so many different groups of players having such down seasons. It's so funny to evaluate their talent as being good. Yet I do think it's a second-year thing. There's a lot of injuries. I'm hoping that our defensive staff can continue to evolve strategically and hopefully take advantage of their players' strengths. If the cornerbacks are much better at man, somehow they can make this defense work in a man coverage system, even though a lot of the traditional Monte Kiffin approaches to defense involve zone coverage. But again, it's also a problem like when you have a lot of man secondary players, then the turnovers diminish. So like one reason the turnovers got lower as the season went on is because they started playing more man coverage, which was the strength of the talent that they had in the secondary, but it didn't play into players looking at the quarterback. Players in a zone scheme are watching the quarterback, and so they're much more likely to make interceptions, and I think that's why the interceptions declined. Also, Sean Lee. Sean Lee is an interception machine, and when he wasn't injured, the interceptions declined. Well, I guess that said, it would be great, finally, all these years later, for Dallas to get a star safety. It seems like star safeties really make defenses. It's really helped New Orleans go from one of the worst defenses to one of the best defenses. It's really elevated Seattle. Back when Pittsburgh was winning Super Bowls, it elevated them. When the Ravens won Super Bowls, their star safety elevated them. I know that the defensive line and everywhere on the defense needs help. But if there's one position I really eye, it seems like it's the safety. Like if we could just have one truly great player there that could really just take the whole defense and at least patch a lot of ills. Create turnovers, get some picks, not drop the ball. I mean, that's one of the things about Ed Reed. He doesn't drop the ball. He makes the easy interception. Good players make the easy play. And it's all great when someone makes a circus catch, but if you could just catch it every time it hits your hand as a defensive back, I mean, Terrence Newman would have been a billionaire if he could have done that, because he often would just push the ball down. He wouldn't catch it. So some play like that out of our secondary, especially out of our safeties, would, I think, really make it. Anyway, so that's the end of this blog post. I hope you enjoyed. Talk to you later.